first graders, and welcome back to another Reading with Miss Fox. Today is going to be kind of a funny story, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Well, when was the last time you guys were sick? Maybe it was pretty recently. Maybe you had the cold or even the flu, which is no fun at all. We all know that it's no fun to be sick, and right now it's really sad because a lot of people are sick and we can't go to school and hang out with our friends, which is a really big bummer. And I really hope that people can start to feel better soon so we can do all those fun things we like to do again. Well, today we are going to read a story about a girl who was terribly sick. Although she wasn't sick like with the cough or a cold or even the flu. This girl was sick with a really bad case of the stripes. Now, what are the stripes, you ask? I guess we're gonna have to read and find out. But today we are reading A Bad Case of the Stripes by David Shannon. And here we see a girl who has stripes all over herself, a thermometer in her mouth, and a cup with a straw. So today we're going to be reading this story and we're going to be making predictions. Now, I know you guys have made predictions before, and some of our work online has been working with predictions. So as we go along, there's going to be moments where I ask you guys to pause the video and make your own predictions. Now, I know it can be difficult since we're not face to face, but I still want you guys to tell me out loud what your guys' predictions for the next part of the story is. And then as we read the book, if your prediction is correct, then just keep going with your prediction. But if it's wrong, we're going to be pausing the video again throughout and kind of changing our prediction as the story goes along to see what happens next. All right, let's go ahead and start A Bad Case of the Stripes. Before we even begin reading, I want you guys to tell me what your predictions of the case of the stripes is. How do you think she got the stripes? What do you think that stripes does to her? And how do you think she's going to be cured, or is she going to be cured of her sickness? All right, go ahead and pause the video and tell me what you guys think this story is going to be about. Go ahead and pause it now. All right, well, after you guys have told me your predictions, let's go ahead and start. A Bad Case of the Stripes. Camila Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camila was worried about what other people thought of her. Today, she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then, she screamed. Her mother ran into the room, and she screamed too. "Oh my heavens," she cried, "you're completely covered with stripes." This was certainly true. Camila was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camila's forehead. "Do you feel all right?" she asked. "I feel fine," Camila answered, "but just look at me." "You get back in bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You're not going to school today." Camila was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say, and she had no idea what to wear with those crazy stripes. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camila. "Most extraordinary," he exclaimed. "I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching?" "No," Camila told him. "I feel fine." "Well then," Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, "I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me." And he went off. That even her tongue is striped. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camila. They called her Camila Cran and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out into stars. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled, "Let's see some purple polka dots!" And sure enough, Camila turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, "Checkerboard!" and a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon, everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camila was changing faster than you change channels on a TV. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream," he said. "I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camila home from school. She's just too much of a distraction. And I've been getting calls from other parents, too. They're afraid those stripes might be contagious." Camila was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now, nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. "Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart?" he asked. "No, thank you," sighed Camila. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at enough for one day. Well, yes, I see," Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. "I think I'd better bring in the specialists. We'll be right over." About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. "This is Dr. Grop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young." Then the specialists went to work on Camila. They squeezed and jabbed, tapped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. "Well, it's not the mumps," concluded Dr. Grop. "Or the measles," said Dr. Sponge. "Definitely not chicken pox," put in Dr. Cricket. "Or sunburn," said Dr. Young. "Try these," said the specialists. They each handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. "Take one of each before bed," said Dr. Grop. Then they filed out the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. Alright, I want you guys to pause the video here, and I want you guys to make a prediction about what you guys think the pills will do. Do you think they'll work? Or do you think that things will get worse for Camila? Or are they just going to stay the same? Go ahead and pause this video and tell me what your prediction is. Alright, once you've paused the video and told me your predictions, we're going to go ahead and continue. That night, Camila took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant, multicolored pill with her face on it. Did you guys predict that Camila would turn into a pill herself? Pretty crazy. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called, but this time, instead of the specialist, he brought the experts. Dr. Gord and Mr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camila was poked and prodded, looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers, then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gord finally spoke. "It might be a virus," he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camila. "Or possibly some form of a bacteria," said Mr. Mellon. Out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. "Or it could be a fungus," added Dr. Gord. Instantly, Camila was covered with different colored fungus splotches. The experts looked at Camila, then at each other. "We need to go over these numbers again back at the lab," Dr. Gord explained. "We'll call you when we know something." But the experts didn't have a clue, much less a cure. Alright, we are going to update your predictions. So I want you guys to pause this video, and if your prediction has been going just like how the book is going, then keep going with your prediction. What do you think is going to happen next? And if your prediction was wrong, I want you guys to write a new prediction about Camila. If the doctors don't even know what's wrong, they don't have a cure, what do you think is going to happen to her? Is she just going to keep getting sicker every time somebody mentions anything? Go ahead and pause the video and tell me what your prediction is. Alright, those are great predictions. Let's go ahead and continue. By now, the TV news had found out about Camila. Reporters from every channel were outside her house, telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out on the front lawn. Camila sure is getting a lot of attention. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herpetologists, nutritionists, psychics, and an old medicine man, a guru, and even a vegetarian. Veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camila's strange appearance until it was so hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camila. "Close your eyes," she said. "Breathe deeply." and become one with your room. I wish you hadn't said that, Camilla groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran out of the house. What are we going to do? Cried Mrs. Cream. It just keeps getting worse and worse. She began to sob. Do you guys see Camilla in her room? Her eyes, her nose, her mouth. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. Excuse me, she said brightly, but I think I can help. All right, we're going to make one last prediction. Do you guys think that the grandma can help? How do you think that she can help? I want you guys to pause this video and tell me your last prediction about what's going to happen in this story. Does she have the cure, or is she just going to keep turning Camilla into crazy things? All right, let's continue and see if your prediction is right. She went into Camilla's room and looked around. My goodness, she said with a shake of her head. What we have here is a bad case of the stripes, one of the worst I've ever seen. She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. Here, she said, these might do the trick. Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. Oh my, no, replied the kind old woman. There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I'll bet you'd like some, wouldn't you? She asked Camilla. Camilla wanted a big, heaping plate of lima beans more than just about anything, but she was still afraid to admit it. Yuck, she said. No one likes lima beans, especially me. Oh dear, the old woman said sadly. I guess I was wrong about you. She put the beans back in her bag and started toward the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good, and being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she's been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. Wait, she cried. The truth is, I really love lima beans. I thought so, the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Mmm, said Camilla. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. I'm cured, she shouted. Yes, said the old woman. I knew the real you was in there somewhere. She patted Camilla on the head, then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care one bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted and never had even a touch of the stripes again. The end. Alright, well I hope you guys enjoyed A Bad Case of the Stripes as much as I did, and I'm very glad that Camilla found a cure because that would get pretty intense. So the cure was lima beans all along. Did you guys predict that? If you did, here's a high five. And if not, that's okay, because predictions aren't always correct. They're not always accurate, and that's okay. Not only when we predict something are we thinking about the future, but it also helps us think about what's going on in the story, because in order to make a prediction, you have to think about who is part of the story, where's the story, what's going on. So it's important to make predictions as you read. Even if it's not something you're told to do, it'll help you kind of think about the story in different ways. Well, Camilla began having the stripes just because she didn't want to eat lima beans, even though she loved them, because she didn't want to be made fun of. Is there anything in your guys' life that maybe you're a little bit nervous about because you think you're going to be made fun of it? Maybe it's a different kind of food that you really love that not a lot of people like. Or maybe it's something you love to wear that you kind of feel like maybe people will be make fun of you for. Or maybe you have a favorite TV show, but you kind of think nobody else is gonna like it and they might think I'm weird if I like it. Well, it's okay to be a little bit different. We're all a little bit different. That's what makes us unique. Well, that concludes our Reading with Miss Fox today. Be sure to tune in because we're gonna be starting a brand new chapter book very soon. All right, bye guys.